Good morning and welcome. This is Sunrise Daily. I'm Ayo Makinde.
It's a rainy Monday morning here in Abuja. Welcome to the show. I'm Kayla Magwa.
Well, I hear that you guys are enjoying. It's been raining all of yesterday into this morning up until now. Is that the case, Kayla?
You know, it was raining. It looked like, when the Bible says it was raining for 40 days and 40 nights. That was how we felt initially. It was raining and raining and raining, and there was no break. Then there was this lovely break. And we're like, okay, so this is the August break. And then all of a sudden, since yesterday night, it's been raining till now. It's still raining. But I'm sure many people need the rain. I'm just done with it.
Well, I can understand that. I mean, don't also forget that it's been in the news all of last week that, it's going to rain quite some. I think the federal government agency in charge talked about 27 states in Nigeria being at that risk. In fact, listed about 300 and something communities in Kano State alone. Now, how many are going to be affected in different parts of the country? That's another thing. And I hope it's not going to happen in Yola. You want to take us there this morning, Kayla?
Indeed, indeed. Our skyline this morning is from Yola. And of course, it's something that we've seen before, but beautiful nonetheless. Always something wonderful to look at whenever it comes on. I mean, Yola is a beautiful city. It's a peaceful place. It's got a lot of loving people, very calm atmosphere. I remember growing up in the north and thinking that Yola was a place I would like to live in at some point in my life. But lovely people, and that particular roundabout there, well, several roundabouts that are merged in one, so to speak, is one that we've seen before. But Ayo, do you remember this place?
I can't forget it. The three-layer road, that's what I call it. And I think there's a second one like it. And there's a second one like it in Kano, and it's very, very exciting. And as you were speaking, Kayla, something came to my mind that for any Nigerian in any part of the world, when you think about the north or northern Nigeria, think that it's not all dusty roofs and brown roofs and underdeveloped communities. This is Yola. Yola is in Adamawa State the last time I checked, and I don't think that has changed. So what you're looking at there, I mean, that's overhead bridge, and then there's that roundabout under it, and then under the roundabout is a road. And it's for me, that's masterful. That's a beautiful thing. And this angle is perhaps the one that we would like you to see. It's I mean, you can see the three layers right there, right? That roundabout is the one that is right under that the inner road where that white car is coming, or white light car is coming from under. Three layers. It's in the north. Two such projects in the north. So when you think about the north, don't just think about some poor, malnourished people. This community is in northern Nigeria, and it is something that I would say we should be very, very proud of as a nation. Take it or leave it.
A very old city. Very
absolutely.
Old city, 1841 Yola, and lovely heritage. You know what Yola means?
You tell me.
Actually, it means great plain.
Whoa.
Vast plain land. Yeah, that's what Yola means. So it actually describes how Yola is. Apart from this roundabout, if you go around Yola, you actually get to see a lot of that vast land, and it's split into two parts, really. The old town of Yola, where the Lamido of Adamawa resides, and then the traditional city and the new city of Jimeta, which is where the administrative and commercial center of Yola is. But there, our skyline, Yola. Good morning, Yola. What's your weather like? How are you guys doing today? And greetings from all of us here on the Sunrise Daily team.
Well, for those who don't know, this area is called the Jabama Jipu Jam, Yola. You may want to correct me because I know that that's what you would love to do. But I find it I find it
You did your
exciting.
best.
Yeah, yeah. I find it exciting actually that Jipu Jam means arrive safely. Correct? Yeah, and that this particular infrastructure was built to commemorate the 50th year reign of the late Lamido, who is regarded as the premier ruler of the state. Well, as Kayla has said, that's our skyline this morning. Up next would have been what's happening today. We'll bring to you in due course, unless we have something like that. In the meantime, let's take you through some of the papers this morning.
Food is one of the most prominent items on the front pages this morning. Blueprint newspaper, market survey reveals prices of tomatoes, pepper, potatoes crash in FCT, Yobe, Borno, Adamawa. That's the lead story. Rice, beans, yam, maize, millet still high. Traders greedy, insincere, says a farmer. All of these you find on the front page. Story continues on the inside pages. Well, if you live in these states, you may want to confirm or refute. Front page of the Vanguard newspaper, why grains importation won't happen soon by stakeholders. One move gone already as FG fine-tunes policy. Customs await list of importers. Stakeholders divided on policy. 100 tons capacity excludes our members. That's from RIMFAN. Find out details of that on page 20. Look at the list of items covered by the executive order. The front page of the Nigerian Tribune, uncertainty over FG's plan to boost food production. Governors yet to provide plans. Stories on page 2. They are working on it, according to a presidential spokesman. Find the details of that story on the inside pages. And look at the front page of the Abuja Inquirer. Lower food prices. Abuja residents relieved but groan over fuel supply. Oh my God. Well, the details you'll find on the inside pages of the paper this morning. Now, there are other stories making the headlines. Look at the front page of the Business Day newspaper. From Russia to Malta, how Matrix Energy imports dirty petrol. What is the meaning of that? You'll find the details continue on the inside pages. The Daily Times newspaper, botched investment. Utomi Amosun trade tackles over contract violation. I was a victim of Amosun's violation of contract terms. That's from Utomi. Utomi is suffering from an entitlement mentality. That's a response of sorts from Senator Amosun. Find the details of that story on page 2. Alleged 21 million naira running costs. Serap demands probe into National Assembly's financial mismanagement. What does that mean? Tells NAS to stop paying running costs into personal accounts. Details on page 21 of the paper this morning. If you check the front page of this Nigerian newspaper, this is what you will find. Taking time bomb. How increasing number of street beggars and abandoned children pose high security risks. Islamic scholars, psychologists warn of danger to society. That story is on page 4 of this Nigerian newspaper this morning. And these are some of the papers we have for you today.
I mean, let's take a look at the Daily Times newspaper because it really ties into our conversations that will be coming up shortly. And it's got to do with this situation in Ogun State. I mean, it's going to be the major story for us here. And I think I do believe we're supposed to have one of the parties involved in this particular impasse on the program today over this contract violation. And we're seeing Utomi speaking here. It says I was a victim of Amosun's violation of contract terms. And of course, Senator Amosun saying that Utomi is suffering from an entitlement mentality. That's from the Daily Times this morning. We'll be bringing you more of that conversation with one of the parties involved on the show today. And then, of course, we have this story here from Serap, still from the Daily Times. This Serap is speaking to the Senate President and the Speaker of the House of Representatives. He says, disclose the National Assembly's running costs or face legal action. It did come up in a lot of conversations over the weekend. How many times has Serap asked for accountability for it, or threatened litigation and actually got, what they want, either the accountability that they asked for, or, getting people to actually face litigation for the questions that you're asking. But then there's a bigger picture, which is that the accountability question is something that every Nigerian is asking at this moment. We need to understand what's happening to our money. How are people able to live these lavish lifestyles while we're tightening our belts as the Nigerian people? Where is the money going? Where is our money? Like Seun Kimbaloye would like to say, where is the money? And what's the money being used for? It's an accountability question. It's a new era that we're in as a people, and one that every government official, elected or appointed, has to get ready for. Ayo, what do you make of this situation?
Well, I can't lie to you. It all looks rather, I don't know. It's all very, very dramatic, if you ask me. So we're trading words now. I've read the comments from Otumba Daniel. I've read the one by Senator Amosun. I've also read the one by Professor Utomi. So I'm just wondering exactly what is going on here. Well, when some of these things happen, we're not aware of it. But now that these things have come to a head, we're hearing all of these things. At the end of the day, what's important is to look at what the issues really are. At the end of the day, it has to benefit the people of Nigeria. Full stop. So if whatever the issues are, I don't know. At the end of the day, I think I read the comments, Kayla, of someone reacting to one of the, either Professor Utomi or Senator Amosun. Someone just listed, well, both of them are friends. Both of them still felicitate with each other. Both of them still greet each other. And then both of them are now saying this, okay, let's see how this is all going to pan out. So, all of that is, at the end of the day, let's just see how the Zhongfu issue, the real issue at stake, let's see how it all pans out. But I'm more interested in the food items. Honestly, that's what I'm very much interested in. Because if you look at the front page of the dailies this morning, you'll find at least 2 or 3 of them talking about food. The Blueprint newspaper says, and according to a market survey, prices of tomatoes, pepper, potatoes crash in FCT, Yobe, Borno, Adamawa. Please confirm if that is true. We heard it last week as well. In fact, in some parts of the country, food prices indeed have gone down. As a matter of fact, about 2 weeks ago, someone, posted something on a WhatsApp status, and I back-chatted him, guy, what's up? And he said, it's actually true that there's this fellow who goes to the market almost all the time and was told that the food prices had crashed. Went there to confirm and found out that, these pepper, tomatoes, and the rest of them have actually come down in Lagos. I said, really? So if this is what we are reading now, let someone come out and tell us why. And let's just be sure it's not a fluke. It's not just one of those things that were, I don't know, whatever it is that you want to make of it. But those are the details, right there. Let's know what you think. Our information will be on your screen shortly. Sunrise Daily at channelstv.com. And of course, you can also meet us on X at Sunrise Daily now. In the meantime, now, we took a break, and when we return, we'll get into the issues. Thank you so much for staying with us this morning. Now, a good number of us are not unaware of what's happening between Nigeria and the Chinese company Zhongshan Fuchen Industrial Investment Company Limited that have taken a significant turn. Now, we also know that this is not a case between China and Nigeria. This is a case between a Chinese company, Zhongshan Fuchen, and the Ogun State government. But because Ogun State, just for those of you who do not understand what the issues are, because Ogun State cannot deal outside of Nigeria without the federal government has to kind of be some form of guarantee. And so they have all kinds of instruments called, one of them being ISDS, which is something that is supposed to protect the foreign company in any country. There are those who are having issues with the ISDS, saying, why should the ISDS always only favor the foreign company against a state? That's state in this context being a country, as opposed to the being the other way around, or even being a balance. We also understand from conversations that we've had on this station that there are some countries in the world who are already kicking against this ISDS, and that they are, as far as they are concerned, it is something that needs to be looked at again, and consequently, favoring one party against the other isn't really something that is good enough, particularly for investments. And all kinds of allegations are ongoing about that one. But the latest that we've heard about this particular case is something that is also very, very interesting. So on the one hand is a comment, a reaction of sorts. As I said earlier, we've heard from the Ogun State government's former governor of Ogun State government, Otumba Gbenga Daniel, who said, look, the best thing to do at this point is just to look at all of the angles of resolving the issue. And of course, Governor the Senator Ibikunle Amosun has also reacted and stated his own side of the case. But it was to that Professor Pat Utomi responded. And there's been some back and forth about that particular matter. This morning, Professor Pat Utomi has joined us for a conversation to understand exactly what the issues are, so that you can have a better understanding and then be able to make informed decisions. Professor Pat Utomi, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Well, it's a great pleasure.
Well, we do realize that it's quite late where you are. Sincere apologies. He's the convener of the Big Tent, and he's also an economist joining us from Washington, D.C. Now, you have heard about this case, particularly between Ogun State and this foreign organization. Your first assessment, the moment you heard it, what was it?
Well, to be quite frank, when I first heard of the seizure, I had no clue what led to it. I just thought we had done it again. I was very unhappy. I talked about the idea of presidential fleets and why Nigeria maintains such a huge fleet, which I consider unnecessary. Many countries much more well off than Nigeria do not have presidential fleets. The British, who we learned the art of statecraft from in this modern era, typically don't have a prime minister's jet. The prime minister leases a BA aircraft to go for assignments and so on and so forth. So that was my first reaction, my first angle. Why are we bringing ourselves to this point of embarrassment? It was only day before yesterday night that I listened to one of your broadcasts, and this whole business of why the thing was, the aircraft were seized came up. And I said, oh my God, I've been warning about this for a long time. There are many subnationals in which the governors act almost irresponsibly in the way they get into and out of foreign contracts that bring great embarrassment to Nigeria. I am a scholar of some global, if you will, disposition, and I get to talk a lot about these things around the world. And a lot of businesses will not come to Nigeria because they think Nigeria's institutions are not reliable. They think the courts can't give you justice. They think boundaries are not clear. Now, many state governments, the governor leaves, another one comes, rips off everything the governor before him has done without thought to the consequence for his state and the country in terms of how seriously the world takes them. And so when I realized that this was what was happening here, I decided to highlight my own personal experience that happened exactly about the same time as this one that led to the seizure. You see, this happens a lot to Nigerian businessmen, but because they don't have the clout of an international organization that can go to international arbitration and achieve what the Chinese firm has managed to, they just lick their wounds and keep going. And damage keeps getting done to our country. It's not just Ogun State. I make the point that I have a book that was published a few months ago, and I published a number of case studies in the book. One of the case studies is exactly of a similar thing done in another state in Nigeria that led to a foreign company, again, another South African, this is a South African one this time, leaving the country with so much loss because one governor decided to play games after he took office. Now, in this particular instance, after I then made the remarks, I was told that the former Ogun State governor then came out with broadsides against me. And I then thought, this is a second big problem in Nigeria, where people who have held public office do not have the, discipline to even speak basic, simple truths in conversations in the public domain. I told the story of my being involved in a transaction. The only time I've ever been in a transaction with Ogun State government in my life. We were trying to develop an agricultural value chain thing. First, a thing or two about my approach to doing business. I, as a member of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce about 20-something years ago, had occasion when the Convention on Business Integrity, led by Soji Apampa, and one of my old schoolmates was on the delegation, the Bishop Eko, came to make a presentation about corruption in Nigeria. And they said their approach was to get businessmen to make public declarations. I will not give, I will not take. And what they don't want to give or take is a bribe. I was shocked to my marrows. More than 60 senior businessmen in the Lagos Chamber of Commerce were at that meeting. And only 3 of us, I believe Dr. Christopher Kolade, the managing director of Cadbury, myself, and I think the late Surveyor Kukoyi, were willing to make that public declaration. Being of that disposition, I therefore recognize that doing business with government is problematic because that is the bastion of these gives and takes. So, as a matter of policy, I don't do business at all with government. The only place where you can't avoid it is when it comes to land matter, because government is the sole authority over land in Nigeria. So in this particular case, we're trying to develop a property that would be the first of a franchise to begin from one end of the value chain of this agric process, which when we create this kind of place that in quality, air-conditioned environment, women can be coming home from work at 6, 7, 8 p.m., 9 p.m. and buy fresh fruits, fresh meat, and all of that at prices lower than Okari, just because we've organized the supply side, we get the best quality at the lowest price. The idea was then to take it down the entire value chain and do a wholesale produce market where farmers from various states can aggregate their produce. We have a commodities exchange, and then we have an industrial park as part of that estate where those who process can do the processing. Somebody, a real estate person, said to us that the Ogun State Plaza, OP Plaza, on what was called Airport Road from Maryland to the airport, next to the Sheraton Hotel, had a place for such. And we approached OPIC and signed a build, operate and transfer deal where we lease this property for 15 years, build this facility, and after 15 years, we turn it over to OPIC. And if we're still in the property, we will now become their tenants and pay them rent. Standard thing that goes on everywhere. Most senior civil servants who own houses in Victoria Island, that's how the properties were developed. Dr. Alex Ekwueme and several other developers back in the 70s developed these properties. A couple of years later, after they've let them out to rent and made their money back, they turned them back over to these people. So it was a very simple thing. Nothing complex, nothing involving high government interference. And suddenly, there's a change of government. And we hear that the new governor, Ibukula Amosu, has stopped all such constructions going on. In fact, one person in that estate who was building his own somewhere in another corner ignored the directive for everybody to stop. They came in with bulldozers to bulldoze his stuff. I said, no, let me call this gentleman and say to him, this is a simple deal. What's our problem? When I got him on the phone, he said, no, your name is not in the list of these people with these properties that we're dealing with. I said, but they said everybody should stop. He said, come to Abeokuta. And I traveled to Abeokuta. When I got to Abeokuta, he said the permanent secretary in charge was away to the UK. I think his daughter or somebody was graduating. Let him call in the other people. Called in, I think there were two ladies. Iwande Amushon, who I knew well, was, I think, working in a bank that I banked with in Lagos. And says to them, look, Prof here says that he has property affected by this order, but I don't recall seeing his name. They said, oh, no, there was no need to have his name because his own is a straightforward, simple thing. And I said, okay, it's because it's Prof, he couldn't put his name. They said, no, it's a simple, straightforward thing. Even there, Mushon, I don't know where she is, but anybody can go and verify from her. And he then says, okay, the simple thing. Everybody should be there, whether it's complex or simple or whatever. We will sort this out. Permanent secretary is back in 2 weeks, and this will be done. You know, this went on to a 4-year rigmarole, call, back, forth. I couldn't figure, we stopped work, obviously, at their order. We had financed the construction. I don't want to tell the long stories of how the CFO, the Lagos state government said Ogun State did not have a CFO for the property. So we had to start pursuing the CFO, the building plan. And in fact, the last time, that took forever and took a lot. And then we did all of that on behalf of OPIC. And one day, I called the governor again. I said, look, we've been talking about this now for years. What's the problem? What's wrong with that contract or anything if there is a problem? He says, why don't you come again? I went to Abeokuta. Each time I traveled with one gentleman called Vitus. And he says, oh, I have to dash to Abeokuta. I have to dash to Abuja. Let's go back to Lagos together and we can talk in the car. I said, fine. Well, he took the driver's seat of his car and invited me to sit with him and then asked his aide and my colleague.
Prof, just 1 second, because, these issues were already contained in that statement that you put out, and that's, it's actually quite detailed. I just want to know, because, you also highlighted the fact that, Prof. Senator Amoson had responded to some of the issues raised, one of which was the fact that the House of Assembly had blacklisted you before he came into office. Is that correct?
For what? I had never ever had any transaction with Ogun State in my life before this. So how could they have blacklisted me? On what count? That's what frightens me. That public officials can make such preposterous statements. I heard that statement yesterday for the first time in my life that I was blacklisted. If I was blacklisted, for what? Like I said to you, I had never ever transacted with Ogun State in my life before this. The only time I ever did anything in Ogun State was when I was invited by the governor before him to give a talk at a retreat. It was not a contract. I was not paid. So how could they have blacklisted me? Ask him what led to that blacklisting. It's bizarre hearing such a thing. That senior public officials can just wake up and fabricate stories. On what subject? What did I have to do that will lead to a whitelisting, not talk of blacklisting?
Well, one of the
ever had anything.
Yeah, but Kayla will come in shortly. But one of the things that was mentioned in that statement by Senator Amosun was that you claimed 200 million naira as opposed to the 100 million naira that they said that you should please take. In fact, that part of their own assessments was that everything that you were claiming was too much, much more than whatever it was that was due to you. Can you give us an understanding of that?
Know what was due to me? Were they there when I was chasing Lagos state government? Were they there when I was traveling around the country setting up supply chains? Who gives them the temerity to know what I can claim? He says, I was talking to one editor yesterday who says, let me take you there. He has spent only 30 million. You will see somewhere than 30 million. So if it is only 30 million, he says that I've spent, why did you give me 100 million? Why is he dashing away Ogun State money to this entitled fellow? He will tell you that something is fundamentally wrong in what he's saying. Cannot be correct. He has no way of determining how much I've spent when he frustrated a business enterprise. The real collateral damage to me of what he did runs into billions. So who is he to be able to assess what it is? And why did he say to me, put in this, get this 100 million and then write again to begin to pursue the next tranche? I was not the only one there.
Prof, there's quite a lot of accusations that Mr. Amosun has made. And of course, Ayo has listed two of them. Another thing that he said was that most of the cases that you're bringing up do not have any standing, and that you're just doing me too, so to speak. In fact, that was the statement, that was the sentence he used. He said, he's going on me too, I have been wronged by the Ogun State government. They said, and I'm going to use his words, that you were blacklisted due to predilection for shoddy business deals in the state. Those were the reasons that they gave, and I'm sure you want to explain what deals they may be referring to there. And then you're saying that you're in the House of Reps' black book, and that you are no different from Zongfu International Investment, FXE, basically saying,
my dear,
alluding to the fact that you may just be doing the same thing that Zongfu did at the time, which was, try to paint someone bad and then come in and, and everything that's happened afterwards.
My dear, have you been listening to me? I have just said to you that I have never, ever had anything to do with the Ogun State government before this. So what did they blacklist me for? I must, you should say that. He was the one who said that they blacklisted me. At least if they blacklisted you for something.
Yeah, that's the statement I gave you. That's the sentence I gave you. The sentence was shoddy business deals in the state.
Which business? I have never done business with them. That's the point I'm saying to you. So how could they be shoddy when I've never done anything at all with them? At all. So he should name the business that they went shoddy.
So I want to get from you going forward in your matter now. What would you want done? We've seen your statement. We've listened to Abikule Amosun. We've listened to everyone speak on this. What do you want done now?
I don't want anything done. I'm just speaking as a patriot to get us to stop governors behaving like that. I walked away. I forgot about the deal a long time ago. I forgot whatever it was I'd lost or not lost. I moved on a long time. I was just surprised to hear that was the source of this problem with these Chinese. And then I said, look, I'm not only a citizen who cares about his country. I recognize that we are in a nation building mode. And unless we correct mistakes, and this is happening too often with state governors, he's not the only one, that unless we begin to talk about it, we will not curb it, we will not set boundaries. Because when you say, people are not willing to invest in Nigeria, but why is it so? And people say, why? Why don't they like Nigeria? It's because these things have a ricochet effect. They tell their stories to others, and others say, that Nigeria, please don't go there. As a patriot, as a citizen who would like to see these things stop and make this point, again, you have to realize that where I'm coming from, is that I'm a student of institutions and economic performance. That's my fundamental area of intellectual activity. Institutions are so critical for progress in any society. Culture, institutions, fundamental for any growth. And I watch Nigeria and I see the actions of not so responsible public officials, because our institutions are weak, continue to harm the country. So when I heard this, I thought, let me make this point so that we can learn. That is why I actually wrote the case study on the Enugu one, which is in this book that I have just published on policy, power, and performance. It had nothing to do with my wanting anything. I don't want anything. They can take the money and go. I'm just saying, let our country stop putting itself in this shame place. That's all I want.
Let's talk a bit about this shame place that you just mentioned right now. And of course, I know, like you said earlier, just coming from the standpoint of someone who's a patriotic Nigerian, one of the things that we've heard the Minister of Foreign Affairs, at least the present Minister of Foreign Affairs, say, and he said this at Malabo recently, he said state governments should not be going into international contracts without the necessary people that should be involved, like the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, ministries, and all the experts in government that should help with these sorts of negotiations. My question to you, really, just as someone who's a patriot, as you said, what did you make when you heard of something like this? Is it possible that this was going on all the while when Mr. Mosun was governor and then leaving office? There have been several levels of litigation afterwards. Who was representing Nigeria's interests in those court proceedings? Just give me your thoughts on that.
The thought is that we've not organized ourselves well as a country. Look, institutions are about boundaries. And in developing these boundaries, systems, processes are put in place. International agreements are very, very important things that we don't just walk in and out of. We should have a clearinghouse through which any international agreement is going to go so that we know what consequences there are. But I think just as a decent person, any decent person, I mean, when we talk about states, countries, it's not different from a household. If you're a head of a household and you are told that your senior brother or whatever went to your neighbor and took a ram and that you have not paid for the ram, you say, it was my senior brother who took it. I don't want. He's eating the ram. That's your problem. Of course, you know that they will blacklist your family as a family that does not live up to its obligations. And so you don't do that out of pure decency and love for your country. But there are many state governors who don't even know enough or think enough. And when they are professionals like accountants, it's even more frightening. And that's why we must talk about this. The failings of Nigeria is the result of failed rational public conversation. That the marketplace of ideas then leads to shared values around which society then acts. Now, we can now start saying state governments, you can't go into contracts, and then that might be the fastest way to grow in the country. I mean, you go back to the 1960s, the country grew because subnationals were the ones creating wealth. So we might then suffer a greater harm because we say, don't let them go in there, and bureaucracy will then prevent good from coming. But if we had shared values, that a governor knows that he cannot cancel a contract that his predecessor went into without setting kind of due process, we put ourselves in a place of trouble. If he knows that, we put ourselves in a place of understanding that then leads others to trust us and go into contractual relationship with us, whether they be state or national. That's really what the point is.
I mean, going into contracts, it's brought a lot of conversations, really, because you do see a lot of people talking, especially on social media, about the fact that many governors like to go into these contracts, and like you said, to reduce the bottlenecks that will stop benefits from coming to their people. But there are people who also believe that a lot of state governors like to go into these contracts because of the kickbacks that they would get from them, and they do not want to be able to share all of that, or all of the trouble that will go into getting everyone necessary involved in getting these things done. In the case of this Ogun matter, I did mention something earlier, and I wanted you to point on that. Who has been, because there have been court proceedings. This order that was given by the French courts is not the only one. We have one from England. There's one from England as well, and there are properties also that have been seized there. So my issue is with the court proceedings that have been going on. Can any government, after Ibikunle Amosun, say that they do not know that this has been going on? Can the Tinubu administration say that they did not know that this had been happening? What are your thoughts? And if you have any knowledge on what's been happening so far, I would like to hear it.
Again, it is a part of what I've been trying to say about how we need to sit down as a people and recognize that our future is in the hands of our agents. Agents are people who go into public life on our behalf, whether they be elected governors, senators. There's a certain level of sensitivity to the common good that they must have that should affect. Why don't we have in the State Attorney General's office a management system for these things that highlight when it's going to become problematic and get the appropriate support to make sure that it comes out right? I have no involvement or understanding of what the processes were there. All I did was to point out that this is not an isolated case. That is not, even with that particular actor, a new thing. There were many of those. And that he was not the only one guilty, that several others in other states have done it as if they have no understanding of the meaning of obligation. And if we begin a process of, first of all, educating people who go into public life, I don't want to, again, go back to this history. When the APC was founded, and I found it interesting, just as I was about to come on this broadcast, my phone was ringing. A senior APC official was trying to call me. I don't know if it had to do with this broadcast. I begged them. I said, look, let us have a massive orientation program for everybody who is going to go into public office. My friend Chifu Yegun said to me, there's no money to do that. I said, you don't have to spend money. I will bring all the experts free of charge as goodwill to me. And they will sit down, the lawyers, the political scientists, the economists, give these people some massive orientation for how to act in public office. We didn't do that. I wrote about that in another book. Why not? And this is the consequence, because people go in there and think it's just a Boy Scout thing without realizing the consequence for the country of their actions in public office. I think that, again, you mentioned names of high office people. In this particular case, I complained to them before they got into high office of today. I went to them and said, this is what's going on now. And they said, we'll talk to him, but that guy is difficult. I complained to these high people in office today about this very transaction. Then I thought, okay, hey, I will lick my wounds and move on. It's happened many times. This is not the first time I'm dealing with this kind of thing in Nigeria, because our institutions are too weak. But if you want, you can give me a session sometime in the future. I'll sit down with you and talk about institutions and how they failed and the consequence, the cost for our development. And this is a classic example. I just wanted us to learn from it, to draw from it. I don't want any I've moved on. I then moved from that level of the value chain where I wanted to start to another level to begin to try and build an integrated producer. See, why am I in business? How do I go into business? First of all, my primary business is the production of knowledge. Thankfully, I've reached a level in that business where I can take care of my hygiene functions. I can pay my school fees, my children's school fees, and everything. And so I say to myself, how do we build a strong economy? Most businessmen will want something they will make, the return tomorrow. But I recognize those are not the things that build economies for good. So I said, since I have the luxury, I'm not rushing to pay school fees. My knowledge creation bit will do all of that. Let me look at long-term businesses that will be pillar ventures for the economy.
Indeed, Prof. Sorry to cut in there. To cut in there, but we do need to, create a timeline, because this is a conversation that is going to be going on for a very long time. Of course, embarrassing in many ways, but very instructive in other ways. So let's run through this timeline just on your screens right now, just so we can see how everything has happened from 2001. This whole situation with these Chinese companies. In 2001, Nigeria and China signed this bilateral investment treaty to encourage investment between both countries. That was where it all started from. By 2010, Zhongshan Fucheng Industrial Investments, through its parent company, Zhuhai Zhongfu Industrial Group, forgive us if we don't pronounce these names properly, they acquired rights to develop the Ogun Guangdong Free Trade Zone in Ogun State. Then in 2011, Zhongshan set up a local entity, Zhongfu International Investments, FZE, to manage the development of the free trade zone. The Chinese firm then carried out several works, including the development of infrastructure like roads, sewage, and power networks within that zone. Then in 2012, Ogun State appointed Zhongfu as the interim manager of that zone. That's the OGFTZ. That was in 2012. By 2013, a joint venture agreement was signed, making Zhongfu the permanent manager of the zone and giving it a majority shareholding in the project. So this was by 2013. Let's move on now to 2016. This was when the problem started. Ogun State abruptly terminated Zhongfu's appointment and took actions to expel the company from Nigeria, including the harassment of its executives and revocation of immigration papers. This was in 2016. Then the next year, in 2017, Zhongshan initiated arbitration proceedings against Nigeria, claiming breach of the bilateral investment treaty. Move now, fast forward to 2021. On March the 26th, in 2021, the tribunal, chaired by Lord Neuberger, former president of the UK Supreme Court, ruled that Nigeria breached its obligations under the China-Nigeria BIT and issuing a final award of $55.6 million, in addition to an interest of $9.4 million and costs of £2.8 million payable by Nigeria to Zhongshan. The total amount is about $70 million. So this timeline gives you an idea of where we are, at least as of now. So the Nigerian public, you know where to start asking your questions from. So you know where to start, dissecting the issues from. I'm going to throw it back to Ayo right now as we wrap up this conversation.
Your timeline. Can I add to your timeline?
Yes, please. Go ahead, Mr. Prof. Sapat.
In 2012, the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington here conducted a major study of China's growing economic influence in Africa. Chatham House was assigned Angola. Pat Utomi, me here, was assigned Nigeria, West Africa, and several people across the continent. After concluding these studies, we gathered in Washington to talk about this. And these were some of the fears that I expressed at the time. I had nothing to do with this company. I was just talking about the issues we needed to sort out in dealing with China. The presentation I made so resonated that about a year or two later, the Shanghai Institute of Strategic and International Studies invited me to Shanghai to speak on this same subject of China's economic growing influence in Africa. Now, if you read a book written by a lady called Irene Sun at McKinsey, Chinese woman, on China and becoming a source of Africa's economic industrial growth. I think the book is titled Africa, the World's Next Great Factory, Private Chinese Investors in Africa. You will see how she talked about trade policy and how it brought Nigeria to where Nigeria is from where it was as a growing manufacturing power in the world. And it was because of this not showing responsible behavior in trade matters that Nigeria crashed from being one of the fastest rising manufacturing economies in the world in the early 60s to where Nigeria lies prostrate today is a non-manufacturing economy. And so when I come to these issues, I'm trying to take the perspective of somebody who has deeply studied these matters and seen his country fail so badly and saying, please, let's not let our country suffer further. It's not somebody looking for anything. And then I'm supposed to invent the fact that I was blacklisted for doing what? For doing that people I've never met, people I've never done anything with. How could they blacklist me?
Well, Prof, just a second. Well, I think, the issues you have raised, Prof, sincere apologies, for butting in again, it would seem. I think the issues are actually quite simple in a way. What exactly the issues are seem to be the fact, not that the states, Nigeria subnationals, cannot do business with foreign organizations, but it is in the process. Does it suggest in any way that these states are breaking any law in particular? Or it's just that they can do this business, but maybe it's the processes or procedures that are at fault? Was there any law broken, or has any state in Nigeria broken any law in doing business with other companies from other parts of the world?
Absolutely. If you sign a contract with somebody and you don't mutually agree to vary the terms of the contract and you take action unilaterally, it's breaking a local law. You not even have to go international law. That's all that is happening. We've not acted responsibly to contractual obligations, period. It's because we make government think that it has the power to do anything in Nigeria that these things happen. And this is what must change.
Is there any instruction or any authority that the federal government can exhibit or deploy to states in Nigeria in that regard to stave off such? Because as you have rightly mentioned, it's not just Ogun State that's, done international business. There are so many others, that's on the one hand. On the other hand is that it's a free trade zone we're talking about here. I mean, there are those who believe that, hey, there are some laws that are supposed to be exclusive to free trade zones and not just local laws.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where we come back to the question of constitution making. Our country needs to rethink its constitution, but believe me, there are things already in place. There's a friend of mine of blessed memory, Prof Naya. He wrote a book on international contracting many, many years ago. I still remember, I think it was white, blue colored book. I can still see it on my desk. And he points to these things. Where are those rules? You see, in days when we were a more serious society, you start work in the civil service. The first things you get, 2 books, GO and FI, General Orders, Financial Instructions. No civil servant did anything in Nigeria in 1964 without looking into those books. Today people just wake up, do anything they like, not realizing they have consequence. This is what the problem is. Our institutions have broken down in Nigeria. And all of us have an obligation, a duty to rebuild. If not, these embarrassments will be repeating themselves. Look, we're lucky that it's not worse yet. It's not worse. What is out there in terms of what we've done wrong, my goodness, if they go after us, you'll be shocked. And I can tell you, because I'm in the arena, I'm on this planet. I'm in aeroplanes every couple of hours from one part of the planet to the other. And I know the things I hear. Why should we allow this to be the burden of our children?
Well, Those issues have been addressed here by you, Prof, and we cannot thank you enough. We're hoping that those in authority, would at least listen to these things and take, a cue or two from them. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Professor Utomi is the convener of the Big Tent. He's also an economist. We truly appreciate your time, Prof. And I know, maybe when you return, because I know it's like in the middle of the night where you are right now, maybe when you return, we can have a more elaborate conversation on this, Prof. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Business Morning on Sunrise Daily today, we'll be talking about crude oil supply to local refineries, I believe, that among a number of other issues. So let's go to Ine Jomekwa.
Thank you so much, Aya. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. And yes, we'll be talking about can we get that crude supply for local refiners? But that in a bit. Let's start from the global space as we always do. Oil prices eased in early Asian trade on Monday as fears of weaker demand in top oil importer China weighed on the market. Take a look now at the numbers this morning, and we can see now it's in the red, 0.2%, you see, for Brent, and it's dropped below that $80, which seems to be a standard, which is a resistance point, you want to call it. $79.55 is what we have Brent at for a barrel. For WTI of the United States, just about $3 away, $76.52 a barrel after I dropped 0.2%. And yes, the United States Secretary of State Anthony Blinken was very busy this weekend. He arrived in Tel Aviv on Sunday on another Middle East tour to push for a ceasefire in Gaza. We know that's a major contributor to price, but Hamas has raised doubts about the mission by accusing Israel of undermining its efforts. So it seems we don't have a middle ground yet for those two countries, warring countries. The mediating countries, Qatar, the United States, and Egypt, have so far failed to narrow enough differences to reach an agreement in months of on-off negotiations, and violence has continued in that area. Now let's look at the Naira and see how it closed. This was closing numbers for Friday. That's what we have here. It's dropped on Friday 0.25%. I think this is the second drop since the central bank reintroduced the Dutch auction system. So we saw a 0.25 drop. So it went from 1,554 naira 48 kobo to 1,579 naira 89 kobo, while for NAFEX it's closed at almost the same, 1,579 naira 74 kobo in that market. So we see a bit of stability now for since the auction, the Dutch auction system was reintroduced. Even we didn't. I don't think we had an intervention from the central bank last week, but mostly we had it 2 weeks ago when it started. But we've seen a bit of stability. The Naira going just around 1,005 and 1,006 for a couple of days now. Keep our eyes on that and see if it continues that way. A bit of corporate now, and our eyes are on Transcorp, Transnational Corporation PLC. They have their results for the first half of the year, and yes, we see that they have their very first, I think they want to celebrate this, very first interim dividend paid to shareholders, a total of about 16 billion, 16,339 million, 0.55 for that's the total interim that they are paid to their shareholders, interim dividend paid. Now for Transcorp PLC, part of this is 4 billion. For Transcorp Power, that seems to carry the highest. Of course, power is a major one in Nigeria. 11.25 billion is what they paid as of the interim, while for Transcorp Hotels, it's 1.024 billion naira paid to shareholders, and they really are proud of this. It's the very first in the history of the company they're paying interim dividend. There are other parts of the results now we see for for Transcorp PLC. Looking at the revenue, there you have it. The revenue went up. No, this is profit before tax. This is profit before tax for Transcorp PLC, went up 283% growth. So while it was 18.5 billion in 2023, we see for 2024 70.9 billion. If we have the other parts also, see if we can have the revenue. Revenue was also up 114% to 175.4 billion naira in 2024 from 2023, where you had 82.1 billion. That's more than 100%. I guess investors would be happy for this. And we see the total assets also for Transcorp PLC. We have the total asset for that grew at 45%. That's for the total asset of Transcorp PLC at 322.9 billion naira. That's what it did in 2024. Now, when we look at Transcorp Hotels, we see profit before tax. They had more than almost 200% growth. That's their profit before tax. So it stands at 10.5 billion for 2024 from 3.6 billion in 2023. Also, we have revenue for Transcorp Hotel right there. I don't know if we have that. Yeah, okay. So we have revenue up 61% at 29.7 billion. That's revenue for Transcorp Hotel. So it went from 18.5 billion in 2023. That's 61% right there. Now let's look at Transcorp Power, which also has some impressive numbers. Revenue for Transcorp Power, we see, went up 142%. Transcorp Power revenue went up 142% at 135.4 billion naira. That's for Transcorp Power. And then profit before tax for Transcorp Power stood at 50.9, went up more than 200%. We say congratulations to investors in that sector, and that's a company. Now, talking about power now, the target of sourcing 30% of Nigeria's energy from renewables by 2030 is one that the Minister of Power, Mr. Adebayo Adilabu, says he is determined to see through. The minister, who taught some energy facilities in Lagos, says that the target is only achievable through partnership between the government and stakeholders in the private sector. Is asking companies involved in generation, metering, as well as manufacturing electricity components to consciously evolve into renewable energy.
Between 8 to 14 hours of daily sunlight. You understand? So solar is quite good for extending our energy expansion, especially to rural areas. And also good for our energy transition targets of having more of renewable energy components side by side our conventional energy sources. The base load source we have today is hydro and thermal. Hydro about 25%, thermal is about 75%. And we have a target to ensure that by year 2030, 30% of our energy supply sources should come from renewable energy. Not only solar, it will be solar, it will be wind, and it will be addition of small hydros.
Well, the world is speaking renewable. We have the potential, but I guess getting it out there is the major one. Now, it might be Monday morning, but InDrive seems to be giving us another side of Monday morning, and that is would I say luxury, relaxation while you work? I think that's what they want to talk to us about. We have Timothy Oladimeji. Timothy Oladimeji is the Senior Business Development Manager at InDrive. Hi, Timothy. Good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, so it's Monday morning, but you're telling us to go for a ride in your Rolls Royce. I mean, lemon green, very catchy for that matter. So get a dream ride. What's this about, please?
So it's our way of saying thank you and letting our users know that they're deserving of the comfort and the luxury that comes with a Rolls Royce. So it's a thank you campaign, primarily to say that. Because I was just sharing with you earlier, last year, we were talking about how we're a very good fit for the economic downturn that we had, and a lot of users had good things to say about us. We had more explosions than we expected. And then we thought about how can we, give back to say a very big thank you to our users than something like this. So we conceived this idea and we're glad to bring it to life.
So how does this work? You said it's going from 17 to 23. That means it's already on, started 2 days ago.
Yes, absolutely.
So how does it work?
So it's at random, all right? So, for example, I'll give a use case on Saturday. It started on Saturday, and the first set of users just, if you place an order, all right, and you find, because on InDrive, you can get to pick your driver based on the type of car, the rating, how far they are from you, and you place another, and you find the InDrive Dream Ride Rolls Royce on the platform. You can just pick and you get a ride for free on InDrive.
And you don't pay more.
You pay zero actually for this particular ride.
I'm sure you're going to restrict this to the island.
Oh no, come on. It's actually available across Lagos. I mean, there have been users in the Ikeja who've testified, also on the island and the mainland. I mean, you can see for sure this is proof of life, of the existence of the Rolls Royce on the streets of Lagos.
So I'm just wondering, now that the queues are back, you need more petrol for this.
Right.
You have a lot of traffic on the road because some parts of Lagos are under construction and the other part has petrol fields, queues everywhere. I wonder how you are factoring this into this luxury thank you that you're saying to your customers.
This, as I said, it's not too much as say thank you to our users, but my focus about the situation that you've brought up will just be about our product and how it addresses the everyday user. Now, this is a campaign saying thank you, but the everyday user, it gives you still the choice. Now, this morning getting here, yesterday I tried to get fuel, I couldn't. And I'm sure that's the fate of a lot of drivers in Lagos this morning, private drivers or general users. But I could still get here, negotiating the right fee, and I'm ensuring that the driver was okay with it and I was okay with it. So what our platform definitely would be able to do for drivers or passengers, as the case would be to provide still the opportunity to move at a price that is fair, putting into consideration the present reality of things. And that's what fairness has been and how we've been delivering it to our users for us.
Are you trying to tell your users now that the fact that there are long queues in Lagos at filling stations, that it's not affecting your price? You still have reasonable
fairness? Let's just put it that way. Fairness is still being delivered because you understand that this increase in cost, because the driver that brought me this morning says fuel is going at about 700 to 1,000. There needs to be adjustments, right? But it's still, fair with the reality of things happening to ensure that the driver is okay with the price and also the passenger is able to, go through his day without being stopped by, the external circumstance like the FIRS scarcity, as you've rightly highlighted. So at a fair price, you still be able to go. Maybe not at the usual price, but it's still fair, not exorbitant, because our prices are not determined by algorithms. You're limited. You're subject to negotiation between the driver. So if it's not fair to you, if you feel you can call in the boss and say, I can't come in today because prices are too high, there are no drivers, so that's fine. But then again, InDrive provides you the option to negotiate rightly and get a ride at a fair price.
Okay, so this Rolls Royce service now, if I go to InDrive and then I try to book a ride, I may see this as an option.
Yes, absolutely. Starting from Saturday 17th till 23rd.
23rd. That's in like 4 days from today.
Yes, so it's going to end. Today's 19th. Yes, that's absolutely correct. So yeah, we still have 4 days for the campaign for our users in Lagos to enjoy the luxury.
What do you hope to achieve, though, at the end of the 23rd?
Primarily to say thank you and to let our users know that we got their feedbacks in terms of satisfaction and quality, and this is to further enforce that yes, we are committed to delivering it. For example, our rating on the App Store is at 4.8, and that's a very high rating for a platform that has over 200 million downloads. Our rating for our feedback from our drivers is about 90% shares satisfaction. And we've also had about 79% satisfaction from our users. So the essence is actually to reinforce our commitment to quality, comfort, and safety with this campaign.
I wonder if there's a possibility of an extension after 23rd.
Well, we can see maybe just maybe a module that will let you actually order something more premium. Actually, maybe we'll keep that in the bag for you now. But for
I knew you have a plan. You want to entice. So people are like, oh, that Rolls Royce ride was really good. So when you have it as one of your services, oh, I want to go for a wedding so I can use
Who says nothing is impossible with InDrive with the right fair price? Actually, you should be able to get something that's you desire.
So I know, because the other time too, when you were on the show here, I see that InDrive tries to model your solutions based on what's at hand, and we're talking about renewables, we're talking about energy costs and all of that. I wonder if there's anything else we can expect from InDrive, to suit the needs of today.
If it's about suiting needs of today, so present needs for today is actually ensuring that the economic downturn is not taking too much toll on the everyday people. Our goal is to actually impact 1 billion lives by the year 2030, and we realize mobility is one of the simplest ways we can address this. And if we can ensure that fairness is delivered, would continue. So that's our focus at the moment. For development, so growth, then development, right? For development, we are very big on data and research, all right? And these are the things that are informing the other growth that we have, like other modules that we've developed. For example, we have the courier, we have the freight that allows you move things as big as 3 tons. You can order for a truck on InDrive to help you deliver. So a whole lot more of those verticals are being developed. The feedbacks that we're getting through our feedback mechanism on our platform is being used to ensure we're delivering the services that are peculiar to the users. That's why you see the modules that you have in Lagos, you probably don't have them in a city like Ibadan or Abuja. We are delivering the solution based on the feedback and the data that is shared by that city itself. So we're very people-driven, not just what we feel like building, but what we know that the people need by the data they're giving us.
All right. Any other thing you like for us? I know you said we should keep our fingers crossed. You don't want to tell us what the next step is. Well, any other thing you like to share with us?
The next step is actually to continue to deliver, to challenge injustice actually, and delivering fairness, transparency, and freedom to people. That's what we're focused on. It's a journey. The lessons you learn on the journey are important. The destination is good as well, but we're very focused on the journey that we are on. And that's just what I would like to share. We're very committed to the quality of service that we're delivering, and that's what this campaign is about.
All right. I hope I'll be able to catch it before 20.
Yes,
I'll take a picture, do a selfie or something.
Yes, you should. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Timothy Oladimeji, Senior Business Development Manager with InDrive.
Thank you.
All right, now, so we have another very important conversation coming up after the break. But first, over the weekend, FIRS did tell us to be very expectant that Revenue Administration will have a different phase from September. This is according to the Executive Chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, Mr. Zach Adedeji. He said it will cater to multiple taxation, handling of stamp duties, as well as cryptocurrency. Laddie Williams should hear this. Well, Ms. Adedeji said this at the stakeholders' engagement in Lagos with members of the Senate and House committees, and gladly he came to Lagos for this. It's a stakeholders' engagement between the Federal Inland Revenue Service and lawmakers from both the Senate and House committees on finance. Stock taking and re-strategizing for the rest of the year is captured in the theme, repositioning the FIRS to achieve its mandate.
We have the 50% of all what MDA collected as revenue.
The executive chairman of the service, Mr. Zach Adedeji, appreciates the achievement of the collaboration so far, but has his eyes on making some bold changes.
By special grace of Almighty God, by September, we are bringing the law that will overhaul the whole process of revenue administration in Nigeria. Not only that, recoding and simplifying the tax law that we have. For example, the Stamp Duty Act is Act of 1939, when there was no internet, no this kind of connection. So we need to bring it today. Today, we cannot run away from cryptocurrency. But as we stand today, there is no law anywhere in Nigeria that regulates cryptocurrency. And it's the new thing that is happening. So we can't run away from it.
His line of thought is in agreement with the perspective of the lawmakers.
As the global economy evolves and as our own economic landscape undergoes transformation, there is a pressing need to reassess, realign, and reposition the FIRS to meet these new realities. This means not only adopting best practices, but also fostering an environment where transparency, accountability, and innovation are at the forefront of revenue generation efforts.
Thank you. As the countdown to September begins, Nigerians will see what a harmonized revenue collection system will look like. Also, what regulation will come the way of cryptocurrency transactions in the country. Certainly, Nigerians are looking forward to that. The issue of multiple taxation and the uncertainty around cryptocurrency has been top on the mind. And as Mr. Adedeji said right there, cryptocurrency seems to have come to stay. We heard on Friday, Dubai have now legalized that cryptocurrency can be used to pay salaries. So I guess we shouldn't be lagging behind. But we're counting down to September to see how or what the face of the new revenue administration in the country will look like. Of course, we know that a lot of it will contain the proposals by the Tawo Yedele committee. But we'll see what that looks like. Let's take a break now. When we come back, the queues are back on the road. NNPCL is talking about indebtedness to international oil traders. Dangote is still asking for crude to begin operations. Imagine if Dangote was giving us petrol. I'm sure we won't have those queues. But anyways, let's discuss that after the break right here on Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. Welcome back. Still watching Business Morning on Sunrise Daily now. This weekend, the NNPC has been really busy responding to some reports. They say that, according to them, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited is not indebted to international oil traders. They refute that report that says that they are owing about $6.8 billion and also that they have not remitted to the Federation account. All of that is on the X handle. But one individual that seems to be in the middle of all of this and has responded to even their response is Calvin Emmanuel. Calvin Emmanuel is an economist and joins us this morning. Hi, Calvin. Good morning. Was all of this about with indebtedness and all of that. I mean, what Nigerians would really, really like to know is, does it have anything to do with the queues that we have? I don't know. I know you're in Abuja, and we know what we've heard that the queues are also back in Abuja. I can tell you for certain it was a horrible weekend for a lot of Lagosians. A lot of people spent their weekend at the filling station trying to get petrol so that at least they can get to work this morning. A lot of people bursted going to churches or social gatherings. And even if you were able to get, then the queues causing traffic. Even this morning, I spent extra time to get to the office because of the petrol queues and nothing else. And we're hoping that by now they would have petrol from Dangote, but with all of this going on, it seems a lot of uncertainty surrounds it, as well as the Port Harcourt refinery. So a whole lot of things here, Kelvin. And I know you've been responding to what NNPCL have said about the issue of indebtedness and remittance to the national PIRS. But please, Nigerians just want to know why, why do we have, in the midst of plenty, we're still queuing and buying petrol at very high prices?
Good morning, Nini. Thank you so much for the privilege to be here. It's always good to be here on Business Morning. And it's quite unfortunate because our estimated monthly consumption of PMS is about 800,000 metric tons. The government, as NNPC has said, consumption is 70 million liters per day. And I've always said Nigeria doesn't consume more than 35 million liters per day. And if they doubt that, they should provide empirical data to back the claim that Nigeria produces more than 35 million liters per day. Now, what are the issues? Number one, you have a situation, for example, where you see in the last 12 months importation of blended petrol from Malta spiked about $2 billion US. And now you have revelations of documents that shows that for 25% of the petrol consumed in Nigeria, there is a link with importation of off-spec adulterated petrol from Russia, from Russian refineries, that is sent and transshipped through blending plants in Malta. Diesel is sent and transshipped through blending plants in Lomé, in Togo. And what you typically have for off-spec petrol is that it's adulterated, and you need to cure it with other chemicals. And this was the reason why, a few months ago when a test was done on samples of diesel that was collected at petrol stations randomly in Nigeria, it showed that one of the petrol stations, that is also linked to importing and transshipping of spec petrol from Russia through Malta, actually had the sulfur level at 2,631 ppm. So you have a situation, for example, where for the other 75% or 600,000 metric tons of PMS consumed monthly in Nigeria, international traders are being owed. Now there's what they call vendor program, supply financing contracts. In 2019, May 2019 and November 2019, NNPC went to Afrexim. They were able to finance about $2.25 billion US of loans through reserve-based lending to provide for this same vendor financing where traders are paid, and the supply of PMS in Nigeria doesn't stop. Now it has come again, and traders are owed billions of US dollars, and the traders are saying that if they are not paid in cash or they are not giving crude oil feedstock that equals what they are supposed to get due for T60. T60 means it takes 60 days for the transaction to be settled, of 60 days for the person who has the invoice payable to make the payment, or unless he'll be incurring interest on a daily basis. And that interest is calculated as LIBOR, 1.5 to 2% plus country risk premium. In my estimate, it's somewhere between 6.5 and 7%, which means Nigeria is paying anywhere around $1.3 million on $6.8 billion the NNPC is owing international traders, and on a daily basis has demurrage for not paying the T60 transaction when it's supposed to be paid. So what you simply see in reality on ground in Nigeria is a situation where if NNPC does not make good on this payment for the 75% that is controlled by the other international traders, for supply to Nigeria. Nigeria is going to be out of petrol, and you're going to see the fuel queues continue around Nigeria. Now, the question becomes, why are we still importing petrol? Why are we importing?
Sorry, Calvin, before you go there, now we do know that Dangote and the other local refiners had talked about international oil companies when it comes to the issue of crude. Are we referring to the same group of people?
No. So international traders are different from international oil companies. Now, international traders are not lessees or licensees upstream that are producing or operators that are producing crude oil on a daily basis and are bound by the DCSO obligations as stated in sections 109 of the PIA. They are completely separate issues. Yeah. So now you have a situation, for example, where you have modular refineries, for example, that can do about 38,500 barrels of combined production on a daily basis. And when you put that 38,005, it can do about 2.9 million liters of PMS on a daily basis. Now, so the question becomes now, modular refineries cannot actually refine PMS. Yeah, they can only refine naphtha, which is the base compound for refining PMS in primary refining process. So why have we had a history over the last 20 years of moving from oil processing agreement, OPA, where the government, PPMC, gave license to 13 offshore refineries to do crude oil swaps and trade crude oil and bring in PMS to Nigeria, to DSDP, direct sale, direct purchase, to what we have today, which is outside of OPA or DSDP. And why have we not had a situation where, okay, if the modular refineries can actually produce PMS by doing secondary refining and bringing in catalytic reforming units, CRU, to process naphtha into PMS, why have we not done backward integration? Okay, now we have a commercial size refinery that can more than satisfy Nigeria's daily demand. Nigeria consumes, in my estimate, about 35 million liters of PMS. That's the true curve, okay? And the refinery in Lagos can do up to 50 million liters of PMS. Why is Nigeria not supplying the refinery with the crude oil? Why is the refinery importing crude oil from Brazil, from the US? In 2009, America was importing crude oil from Nigeria. As a matter of fact, there was a time in 2009 when America was doing about $1 billion in imports on a daily basis. And Nigeria was one of the top 3 markets for purchasing crude oil. Obama came up with a charge to the Department of Energy in America and said that he doesn't want to keep importing crude oil from volatile countries in Africa and the Middle East. And they went to the hydraulic technology, they came up with fracking. And now, as a last count, America is producing about 13.4 million barrels of crude oil on a daily basis, ahead of Saudi Arabia and Russia, and even Brazil. So the question is, how did we go from a country that was exporting crude oil to the US to a country that its largest refinery is now importing crude oil from the US? It's an irony, So now we come to the DCSO obligations, the domestic crude oil supply obligations. Yeah, what does the law actually say? What does the PIA say about DCSO and about supplying crude oil to domestic refineries? The law says that NMDPRA, which is a regulator for refineries in Nigeria, and not just for Dangote refinery, for all the other modular refineries in Nigeria, for OPAC, for Kwale, for Aradel, for Walter Smith, the law says that NMDPRA is supposed to record a shortfall for all the refineries in Nigeria on a daily basis, a supply shortfall, and send that note to NUPRC. And on a daily basis, NUPRC is supposed to issue a request for quote, an RFQ, to the producers upstream, both the Independent Petroleum Producers Group, IPPG, and the IOCs, to provide that shortfall, lest they will not get export permits from Ministry of Trade and Investment to lift products out of Nigeria. That's what the law says. Okay. Now, people are bringing up issues like, there are stabilization clauses in the joint venture agreement signed. There are pre-export financing contracts with traders, which says that traders are supposed to provide financing for some independent producers. And when the producer is supposed to give crude oil feedstock back to the traders as payment for that financing provided. But you can't have contracts supersede what the Petroleum Industry Act of 2021 says, because the PIA is the Bible for the oil and gas sector in Nigeria, upstream, midstream, and downstream. For we to have a situation where we stop this issue of 2 months we have supply, for 2 weeks we have fuel scarcity all around Nigeria, there's no petroleum equalization fund to ensure that there's uniformity of price across Nigeria. Some people in Lagos are buying for 568, Some persons are buying for 620 in southeast or in the northeast. Some people are buying for 1,000 naira per liter. We need to address the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is that local refineries, domestic refineries, and not just Dangote refinery, the modular refineries in Nigeria, they need crude oil feedstock. NNPC, as the custodian of the federal government's assets upstream, needs to get serious about increasing its daily output. It needs to get serious about working with NUPRC to comply with the domestic crude oil supply obligations, to supply the domestic refineries with the crude oil that they need to provide PMS to Nigerians.
All right,
in 2024,
Calvin,
we should stop importing PMS.
Calvin, let me come in there, because I think, was it last week or so, actually Dangote did share a statement appreciating the NUPRC for giving them a certain number of cargoes, which was not up to what they want. And they also said that NUPRC has come to say that they cannot even meet up with the local obligation because of commitments. I know Nigeria has done a couple of, like you mentioned, the Afrexim Bank has done a couple of loans for crude. So they are not able to meet up with that. So I guess the question is, where do we go from here? We know what the PIA says. We know what the law says, that they're supposed to meet up with domestic obligations first. But now we also have debts that has been taken, which has to be paid with crude.
Okay, so now the question I have to ask you, Ini, is, does it make sense that NNPC wants to borrow another $2 billion? Yeah. And one of the external asset managers to the Central Bank of Nigeria, that is a book runner on the transaction, is currently working on the transaction to tie a well to that $2 billion loan. Yeah, that will be paying about 35,000 barrels per day. Does it make sense for you to borrow $2 billion, not to invest in capex, to increase your production upstream and supply and fulfill the terms of the domestic crude oil supply obligations as stated in the production guidelines under the PIA? And instead, you want to use that $2 billion loan to draw down on the debt you're owing traders. Does it make sense to borrow money to service an already existing loan? Does it make sense? This is the question we have to ask. If it doesn't make sense, how do we address the issues upstream to increase production? And how do we ensure that there are no foul play in how crude oil is allocated under domestic crude oil supply obligations? Dangote has, for September, has only been allocated 6 of 15 cargoes. So you have anywhere around maybe 6 million barrels out of 15 million barrels that's supposed to be allocated. If a commercial refinery that size needs about anywhere around 450 to 520,000 barrels of crude oil to hit 70% capacity utilization, which is where it needs to break grounds or break even. Okay? So if you're not supplying him with the crude oil feedstock that he needs, you've not even done 50% of it, he has to, meet up with the balance by importing crude oil feedstock from other parts of the world that Nigeria was exporting crude oil to. And when you do that, you have a situation where you saw the auction that CBN did, the retail Dutch auction. Dangote bidded for about $138 million, if I'm not mistaken, right? Because he needs dollars to be able to import crude oil feedstock. So what you have inadvertently is that when you don't supply crude oil to the domestic refineries in Nigeria, they end up going to the FX markets in Nigeria to bid for dollars, put more pressure on the currency, which increases inflation, and then compels the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank to raise the MPR. So it's a vicious cycle. And this is the reason why I've said that, listen, it's time for NNPC structure to change. We need to obey Section 65 of the PIA that says that NNPC needs to migrate from unregistered joint ventures and production sharing contracts to incorporated joint venture models with IPPG members and the IOCs upstream. There needs to be governance and accountability in the way joint venture agreements are structured upstream. There needs to be governance and accountability in the way financing is rated for what is called carried costs and carried interest that goes into what you call your joint venture cash calls, which NNPC has struggled to pay for several years. These are the issues upstream, and these are the reasons why the companies who produce upstream are not willing to invest monies into deep offshore wells, shallow wells, and onshore wells to increase production in Nigeria. The president says that he has a target to raise output to 4 million barrels over the next few years. But the question is, what is he doing to obey the PIA to attract institutional capital into the oil and gas sector in Nigeria, upstream? And this is why I'm always shouting and saying that, listen, we need to change the way we do things with NNPC. The way we do things has not worked out so far. You know, this morning I saw a statement that says that, NNPC released a statement to deny that you have not been remitting money since January to the Federation account, which in my opinion is completely not true, because actually they've not been remitting money to NUPRC for royalties to the Federation account since January of this year. Okay, and now the government has confirmed that they've been asked to defray the cost of subsidy payments in claims with the monies that have not been remitted to the Federation account from NNPCL. No, we need to move from a situation where NNPC gets its matching orders from the government to a situation where we can amend the act that establishes Ministry of Petroleum Incorporated, Ministry of Finance Incorporated, 50-50% as stated in PIA, and move it from the state-owned enterprise it is now into an asset manager as a beneficial owner that will take it to the markets. NNPC needs to be driven by a market-based investors that will determine its management team, that will determine its board. And the issues around accountability is the reason why, unless the government decides to let go and allow the markets to run, you can see NLNG. NLNG works. NLNG is one of the best run companies in Nigeria. NLNG works because the Nigerian government has minority stake, 49%. IOCs have 51%. And the Nigerian government doesn't have a say in how the operations are run. The operations are run based on global best practice. It runs because the Nigerian government does not dictate to the management of NLNG how the company works. That's what NNPC needs.
All right, so Calvin,
we take the radical step to transform how NNPC is run, we will not increase production upstream. We will not be able to meet our domestic crude oil supply obligations. We'll continue doing crude oil swaps that is very deadly for allocation of DCSO obligations.
So with all of this picture you have painted, it seems the pronouncement of crude for Naira may not even make any difference.
So the pronouncement for crude for Naira, what it does basically is that it will relieve the pressure of the refineries midstream that need crude oil feedstock to refine and produce on a daily basis, from going to the Arudas, the retail auction or wholesale auction, to bid for dollars or source for dollars to be able to buy the US dollars. Now, what typically should happen, and this is what I have proposed, that the government should consider, is that, listen, if you're doing DCSO obligations and you're allocating crude oil feedstock to the refineries in Nigeria, and you're saying that there's an opportunity cost of not getting US dollars for CBN to do its balance of payment obligations, what you can do is sit down with the FIRS and CBN officials and tell the domestic refineries that, listen, if we allocate crude oil to you in Naira, as the PIA says, we will require that for whatever product you export as derivatives, a major percentage of it has to come back to Nigeria, to the originating bank as net export proceeds. And I dare say that the value you derive from exporting refined derivatives is actually higher than the value you get from selling crude oil feedstock. All crude oil produced around the world on a daily basis, about 88 million barrels per day. OPEC is about 32 million barrels per day for its members. Actually goes to refineries in Southeast Asia, in Europe, in America, in the Middle East. Crude oil is meant for refining. So if we're producing crude oil and the refineries in Nigeria are not getting feedstock, it's an irony. And I'll tell you this, in 2024, early this year, the European Union, and especially the governments of the Netherlands and Belgium, banned blending of off-spec adulterated petrol in most of Western Europe. So you have a country, for example, in the Mediterranean, Malta, that has 5 major terminals for transshipment, for bunkering, and for blending. Okay? The Maltese government has not come up to speed with the European Union. And you've had a hub where traders in Nigeria, violate the terms of quality specification according to American Society of Testing and Materials that says that every product you bring in Nigeria must meet up with 50 ppm parts per million for sulfur. Octane level should not be less than 70-75. Dangote is proposing to produce between 93 and 95 Euro V, which is way higher than what they are doing. His sulfur level is down below 30 parts per million for diesel, And you have a situation where off-spec adulterated products are transshipped from Russia through Malta and they are sent to Nigeria. On paper, the regulator says they meet quality assessment, but when the test is actually done based on international best practice for gasoline testing, products turn out to actually be so much off and hazardous to Nigerians. So we need to ask ourselves the question, do we continue to import substandard adulterated products into Nigeria, or do we supply the domestic refineries in Nigeria? And not just Dangote, because Dangote refinery is not the only refinery in Nigeria. As a matter of fact, the Bua Group is proposing to build a refinery in Akwa Ibom. Okay? It's going to come out in a few years' time. When it comes out, there is going to be the issue of, competition in the markets. The government is trying to reactivate the Port Harcourt refineries. So it's not just Dangote. When the Port Harcourt refinery comes, you're also going to have the government-owned refinery in Port Harcourt that's about 150,000 barrels per day, and that can do anywhere around 12 to 15 million liters of PMS on a daily basis. So do we continue this strategy that relies on OPEC, where we export 100% of what we get, less all the domestic crude oil supply obligations, or do we do a backward integration in our strategy and increase the allocation for DCSO obligations so that there's enough feedstock to meet up what they call the national oil supply curve, and we can, meet up with terms of our of our energy security? Because if you don't have crude oil feedstock to provide comparative advantage to domestic refiners, you will not be able to supply Nigerians with the PMS, diesel, Jet A1, and all the other products that they need.
All right, Kelvin, thank you so much. A whole very soul-searching questions right there. The issue of quality, obviously, the need for restructuring of the NNPC, as you have said, and the end of the day, energy security in Nigeria. But thank you so much for your time, Kelvin Emmanuel, for sharing your thoughts with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Well, as Kelvin said, Dangote is not the only local refiners in the country. We also have the modular refinery. So we'll continue this conversation at 1 p.m. during Business Incorporated. We're going to have the chairman, board of trustees of Koran, as the Crude Oil Refiner Owners Association. You'll be joining us on Business Incorporated, and we'll further this conversation, so you don't want to miss it. But right now, let's head back to the Sunrise Daily Studios. Welcome back. Well, we do have just a few minutes to the end of the show, but before we go, we do have Mr. Bitrus Kaze joining us via Zoom, and I think we will be able to speak with him shortly. Honorable Bitrus, former member of the House of Representatives, good morning, sir. Very well, thank you. We'll continue our State of the Nation conversation this morning, and we're going to go straight to the National Assembly. One of the biggest stories coming from the National Assembly has to do with payments and these entitlements. But let's get your own view, because it does feel like everyone who has been a former lawmaker who's come on TV in the past few weeks has a different figure that they've been earning. Just tell us what the actual earnings per month were at the time when you were in the National Assembly.
I can say straightforward that after the time I was in the National Assembly as a member of Congress, it was definitely below 1 million naira. There are certain things they deduct from the salary, and what ends up in your pocket really is around 700,000.
What about these claims of 20-something million that are coming from allowances and all sorts of, monies that are accrued to lawmakers? You didn't receive any of that?
Well, you called it, first you called it a claim. As to our allowances, as to our payments, they are determined by the relevant government MDA. What happens is, to the best of my knowledge, there's what we call running costs. Sometimes I see comments in the public space They talk about constituency allowance, they talk about dressing allowance, they talk about all sorts of things. Whatever a member of the National Assembly earns is strictly as provided for by the National Revenue and Fiscal Commission.
Can you give me a broad figure? Okay, so let's accrue, let's put it together for a month. When you were in the National Assembly, in a month, just give me a figure, apart from your salaries, everything together, in a month, how much were you taking home?
Maybe 7 or something like that.
7 million.
I think so, yes.
Now, everyone is talking about, extravagant lifestyles that your lawmakers, your former colleagues, so to speak, and government officials, you're talking about, look, these people live too extravagantly for us to believe as a people that they are tightening their belts alongside us. What do you make of this?
Well, the truth of it is that considering what Nigerians are going through, the hardship, the cost of living, it is very difficult to excuse any extravagance living by any government official. What I find a bit worrisome is that it would appear as though in the subconscious psyche of many Nigerians, they perceive lawmakers as strange. We have suffered under military rule. Our own generation knows what military rule is. We may not know exactly what colonial rule is, but we know what military rule is. That understanding dictates the presence of a lawmaker in the first place. So this perception that a lawmaker does not deserve or is expected to receive any payment at all is what to me as Nigerians. But that is not to excuse any extravagant lifestyle. I know for fact in 1999, I was I was not a member by then, but I was a personal assistant, a member of the House of Reps. The issue of allowances of about 3 billion that time almost brought democracy down. It's not as though members of the National Assembly have just chosen to pack away money. It's not as though members of the National Assembly have chosen to siphon money. Whatever penny a member of the National Assembly receives is budgeted for. And definitely, all payments you receive are appropriately retired as is expected by law. So, in other words, if you go to my file, between 2007 and 2015, every kobo our state from the National Assembly conference, you will see how it was appropriately retired.
These amounts of money that your former colleagues are receiving right now, we're seeing at least in the 20s. Let's put it between the 20 millions. Is it justified in your view?
I'm not hearing this from the members of the National Assembly themselves. I wouldn't know if they receive that much. But I do know that whether it is 3, whether it is 7, whether it is 20, 30, or 40, Nigerians do not seem to understand that it can be justified at all. But more so, considering the hardship, I mean, like when I was in the National Assembly, apart from my own aid that are given by the National Assembly Service Commission, 5 of them, I employed other aides and I paid, and the least I paid at that time was 20,000. Now that 20,000, as between 2007 and 2015 when I served, could buy 2 bags of rice, and still the person who earns that from me still have something left for him. It's my driver, my cleaner, and something like that. But if you consider what is happening at the moment, assuming I am still a member of the National Assembly and I pay the same staff 100,000, it cannot afford to buy him 2 bags of rice. Under that circumstances, it would appear as though it is insensitive for members of the National Assembly, and not just members of the National Assembly. I'll be glad to know what the governor earns. I'll be glad to know what the minister earns. I'll be glad to know what other government chief of staff and all of them earn compared to the National Assembly, and considering the time, it would not be justified, because if it does not add value, it does not help put food on the table of Nigerians, certainly nobody can say anything that would justify that.
Well, just before we let you go, because we do have quite a lot of messages to get to, just your view on the state of our economy right now, especially as someone who represented people, the good people of your state, Plateau State, with everything that's going on in the country. Just your thoughts. Is the government, both at federal, state, and local, are they towing the right, course to get the Nigerian out of the situation that they're in at this moment? The actions right now, are they the way to go in your view?
Well, I think government can do much more better. I think they are earning more. I mean, as in revenue, I'm talking of revenue that is coming to both state, local government, and federal government. They are earning more revenue, especially considering the fact that subsidy, whatever it is, has been removed. But I know for fact that government is earning more. I think government can do much better. The hardship is just extreme. The hardship is simply unbearable. The hardship, and I was chatting with somebody this morning. I said, if those of us who have the privilege to have served at national level are finding it very difficult to cope with the economic circumstances that we are seeing in the country, how much more with somebody who has never earned a kobo from government, somebody who spent so much money pursuing education in the university, probably even private universities, and now they have earned good certificates and are not able to be employed. Certainly, I believe there is a lot of room for government to improve. They can cut spending. They can cut excessive of government spending and can inject money in areas that help the poor masses to be able to survive the hardship of this economy. Honestly, things are not easy. But as a person, to be honest, I won't speak like other politicians have spoken. But me, I supported Teacher Obi because I am so sure that if we were the one, things wouldn't have been this bad. We are told that so many government officials are saying that they bought the seat with their money, but that's what you get when you got people who came around with money and dipped out money and bought your consciences. This is what you get. It's unfortunate we find ourselves where we are, but let me also say that whatever the situation is best for Nigerians to support government as it is than what we saw in the process of people calling for military intervention. Let that never ever happen in this country again.
Well, Honorable Kaze, we do have to let you go there now, but thank you very much for making our time to be with us on Sunrise Daily, and good luck with all the work that you do.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Honorable Beatrice Kaze, the former member of the House of Representatives. We do have quite a number of messages. Let's start with Ayo.
Well, yes, this one is not my comment. It's from Segun Shokwiton. He spoke actually to the timeline, the skyline that we began with earlier. And this is his comment. I lived in Yola for 2 years till 1994. I visited a few times, most recently in 2018, 6 years ago. This project didn't exist then. Unbelievable. I'm totally blown away at the audacity of the project. I am as well, bro. I will pay close attention to the human development issues of that state going forward. But other states, please take note. Well, I don't know if you're blown away as well, or if you know any such projects all over Nigeria, just let us know. It will be good to cover them. Back to you, Kayla.
Yes, indeed. And just for Segun Shopiton, this is not my Twitter handle. My Twitter handle is Kayla Megwa. I don't know what this one is with all the figures. But thank you very much for your message. First is Akumboyewa, our regular. He says it's an insult, he says, for a Chinese company to seize our assets. Our government at all levels must now learn the valuable lesson that doing business with Chinese and foreign countries or companies can be a challenge. Any future contractual agreements with Chinese and foreign companies must fit our legal landscape. Only Nigeria's law must apply to the contract, and only Nigeria's courts must handle any court proceedings and not foreign courts. And just to add to that, they did just some clarification, really. They did approach 4 courts, according to Mr. Amoso, 4 courts, and those courts threw out their cases. Well, that's our message there from Festus Akim Boyewa. Abiodun, I think I see this one from Abiodun. He says the issue must be seen as a systematic value issue and must not be seen as extraneous to how we as a people see contracts between people, between workers and employers, and even students in schools, as easy to break with impunity and disdain. Well, those are the messages we can take. Thank you all for the messages that you've all sent this morning. It's still raining in the nation's capital, so if you're driving, please be careful and stay safe. I'm Kayla Magwa. Thanks for joining.
Well, just a quick one. ISDS means Investor State Dispute Settlement. That's what ISDS means, for those who are wondering what all of that is about the foreign companies' disputes. Amaya Makinde, you have a beautiful rest of your day.